Come, spell weavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome back to Rollin Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and this evening I am very excited to welcome back my friend, the Basic Expert. He has a fantastic game that is currently on Kickstarter with 19 days to go and fully funded, I might add, called Macuahuitl. It is Aztec role-playing with a Whitebox engine. So those of you who are interested in Whitebox D&D, interested in Aztecs, interested in Mesoamerica in general, this will be a great project for you to back. It's really cool looking. He did the art, he did the writing. It's, this thing looks awesome. And I'll bring him on in just a second to talk about it. Before we do that, though, just want to go ahead and pay some bills here, as if that actually pays any bills doing this show. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content that I'm doing here. That's one of the best ways to support me. And also, you can find me on various social media. I am on X and Instagram at Howard_Ryan Gregg. YouTube is Rollin Bones. Twitch is twitch.tv/RollinBonesRyan. And Substack is rollinbones.substack.com. Substack is kind of my pet platform right now. I'm really enjoying writing articles over there. In fact, just yesterday, I wrote an article kind of featuring some of Basic Expert's work here about rules setting dynamic and how that kind of plays out, how I think that rules are the driving force of RPGs now and how I've come to that conclusion. Also want to remind everyone that if you like this show enough to want to wear my logo around on your chest, you can find that over on TeePublic. The link is here in chat. The Bonehead Emporium over on TeePublic is where you can find all of my merch. And without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on the man of the hour. You guys know him from Natural Ones. You know him from his YouTube channel, The Basic Expert. Many of you out there who are watching know him from his infamous Gilded server, where we have lots of good times. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to Rollin Bones, The Basic Expert.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure to be on Rollin Bones.
No problem. I'm glad you were able to find time with all the interviews that you've been doing to come on here and talk about this.
Yeah, always, of course. I'd love to talk about it, especially with you. We always have good conversations.
So to kind of begin this conversation here, for those who don't already know, I just want to kind of prime the pump by asking why role-playing in the Aztec Empire? What is it specifically about Aztec history that speaks to you?
Well, one, I mean, it's part of my ancestry. So ever since I was a kid, I've always been interested in the mythology and whatnot and stories. And, as a little kid too, this is a warrior society, a very hard militarized warrior society. And that's very appealing to little boys, little boys think that that's really cool. So that's part of it. And yeah, I guess I never grew out of that to some degree. And so there was that part. And then I was going to have it be about the conquest, to be linked to that, the Spanish conquest. And I didn't go that route because that took 2 years. And the Aztec Empire is from 1200 to 1320 or so. It's a long time. It's plenty of time, for more time than 2 years for a multi-generational campaign, if you want to run a long-running campaign within that setting. And the culture's interesting enough and the myths are interesting enough, I think, to warrant them standing on their own without relying on what everyone knows the Aztecs for, is their conflict with the Spanish. So I guess those would be my reasons.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of take a look at the Aztecs kind of through the lens of their mythology, because I think there's been a lot of writing and discourse and fiction and nonfiction all kind of built around the Aztecs' fall, but there's been very little, or at least very little in English, that kind of explores Aztec mythology and really, I guess, kind of, portrays Aztec fantasy, as it were.
Yeah, when we think of Aztecs, we think of like two things, which is human sacrifice and the Spanish and the conquest, and their conflict with the Europeans. And then there's again so much more interesting stuff to delve and dive that you can use in your games or to inspire you within that, because this is a whole fully fleshed out, fairly advanced social structured society that existed for a couple hundred years as an empire. And so there's plenty of material there. Like their empire has lasted about as long as the United States. It lasted for that long, and like we have so much mythology within our own country. And this is like essentially a Stone Age culture to some degree too, based on the weaponry and whatnot. That the mythology and everything is even more rich than something that's somewhat modern to us with our own country in the United States. So yeah, I don't know. It's there's a lot to explore there, and so I'm hoping that they dig it and they have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. And already in chat, we've got some good questions here. Ryan Heffelfinger, the curator, wants to know, did you look into the tunnels underneath the Aztec pyramids that some speculate are connected to precursor civilizations? And have you, thought about making adventures kind of around exploring those tunnels?
Yeah, that's definitely an option. But I've said this on other streams too. Underground caves and things like that. These they held a different significance to the Aztecs than they did to what we perceive in our Western mindset, especially within the classic D&D mindset of like when we look at a cave in a traditional D&D game, we see it as there's a cave or there's a dungeon. If we go into the earth, the deeper we go, it's going to get riskier, but there's more treasure, there's more loot, there's more things for us to be had to bring back to the surface and make ourselves rich, make ourselves wealthy. Like gold, obviously in old school D&D, gold for XP, it's the prime motivator for getting players deeper and deeper into dangerous places. The Aztecs didn't see subterranean things like that. Caves were and these subterranean places were considered sacred wombs of the earth. There would definitely be like mystical, potentially dangerous things down there, but it's a different perspective. So trying to tackle that with still being true to the culture and their views is tricky, because an Aztec warrior, for instance, a Jaguar warrior, an Eagle warrior, he'd be more concerned about victory on the battlefield, sabotaging enemy camps, bringing back sacrifice victims and slaves, bringing back tribute and loot to his city state. He wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, there's a cave over there, let's go explore it. There's probably stuff there for us to take, if that makes sense. So it's a fine line between like, you don't want to like overlay too much of our modern sensibilities over, even in this respect, over them, in my opinion, if that makes sense to answers the question, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of piggyback off of Ryan's question there's a lot of historical, I don't know if you want to call it historical revisionism, or I guess like re-examination of the Aztecs. I'm thinking specifically of people like Graham Hancock, who have gone back and looked at Aztec records, trying to determine kind of like, were there advanced civilizations before the Aztecs? Because it certainly seems from their writings that there were. Because role playing is so often kind of built on the idea that you're living in a post-apocalypse. Is that something that you played around with at all in this game?
A little bit. Let me unfreeze my camera real quick. That's always awesome. See if it works. Gotta love technical difficulties. Anyways, yeah. Let me move it here. I got my green screen. Yeah, so there were previous civilizations. There was the Toltecs and the Olmecs, and the Aztecs were very keen on trying to link themselves to these people because they were all about rewriting their own history. The Aztecs, part of why they were so successful is they were masters of propaganda. It's what makes delving into their history very complex because there were a lot of emperors that destroyed previous historical records to change the narrative to be what they wanted it to be. In order to give themselves a right to rule over the other tribes of the area, the other factions and clans. But as far as a post-apocalyptic thing, it does kind of fit because the Aztecs believed in multiple suns, multiple worlds previous to their own. They would say their sun was the fifth one, and there was 4 previous worlds to theirs that had been created and destroyed. And I sort of lean into that within Macuahuitl, where there's sometimes elements of those previous suns still out there lurking in the hills and in the jungles and in the forests and in the wild places that you could run into, giants and inhabitants of the previous sun that could be a problem for the player characters and their city state. So it's not quite as on the nose, but I think why it works is because I agree that D&D obviously is a post-apocalyptic thing. There's a post-apocalyptic element to that, where the points of light, some people use that term, are trying to rebuild society in some case. And the Aztec, to a great degree, were really trying to do that as well, especially with their mythology of, again, previous worlds and previous suns that had fallen into ruin. And they were now the new keepers of this new world, and they didn't want to lose it. So,
yeah. Now, this just kind of occurred to me, and again, this is territory I'm not at all familiar with. But you are, both someone who has grown up kind of around Latin culture, and you're also a musician. Specifically, I know that you were into metal for a little bit. And I just have to ask, is there any Aztec metal out there? Because Aztec mythology is very metal. There's Viking metal. Has anyone kind of crossed those streams?
Yeah, there's a band from, I think they're from Guadalajara. They're called Semikan. It's spelled Cemekan, or Cemecan. Sorry, Semikan, and they're pretty good. They're like a little thrashy death metal band, and they go out on stage. They do like the kind of corpse paint, but they make it like Aztec style, like Aztec war paint style. I think I shared one of their songs on stream last night on Natural Ones. But there's Azatlan. There's another one I can't remember their name off the top of my head right now, unfortunately. But they have a little more like a symphonic power metal vibe to them. So yeah, the Mexican people have definitely, as far as metal is concerned, they've made that connection and leaned into it. So
nice. I love that. Now, I say this as a huge power metal fan. I don't think Aztec necessarily fits within the power metal oeuvre. I think when I think about Aztec mythology, I'm definitely thinking doom metal. I'm thinking kind of Sabbathy sounding metal.
I haven't heard any doom metal bands that were Aztec, or Aztec flavored or influenced, but maybe some Semican is too fast. They're too thrashy and death metal-y. Yeah. That'd be an interesting one. Though most seem to lean into the brutal, because they want that Latin rhythm, that those Aztec drums. They kind of lean into that. A lot of those bands, which I think kind of leans into faster paced music in a lot of ways too. Which doom metal can be a little slower, but I'd be interested in hearing that doom metal Mesoamerican influence band. That'd be interesting.
and that might just be from kind of again, a lot of like Texas metal, a lot of Western metal has kind of that doom inspiration in it. The ones that aren't doing the speed metal Motorhead thing, a
Mm,
lot of them are very like Southern sludge is a whole genre in and of
mm.
itself, and so I guess that's kind of where I'm making that connection in my mind. But e- either way, it sounds fascinating, and I should probably give that a listen.
Yeah, Semican is the biggest one that comes to mind. They're pretty good. I think people would probably enjoy them. If you're like metal, you probably enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I just have to ask, did you stat Quetzalcoatl?
I did not. I didn't stat any deities in this game.
Okay.
TSR already did that
Hmm.
in deities and demigods. So find a copy of that. But if you want that to happen, if you need stats for gods, but this is a game where I wanted the gods to feel kind of distant,
Mhm.
and the players are not necessarily going to like, hey, it's a Mishcoatl over there. Let's go fight him.
Yeah.
That wasn't how I envisioned the game. And I'm a big proponent of rules equal setting. And
Mhm.
if I don't give you stats for that, it kind of means that you can't do it. I guess you could try and make stats yourself, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the double-edged sword of statting your gods is it as Noah Antweiler, the Spoony one, once said, if you stat it, they'll try to kill it just
Mhm.
because they can. Someone's flipping through the book and sees that you statted a god they recognize. They're going to try and hunt him down and see if they can take him.
Yeah.
Which I think is what happens in a lot of Planescape games. But I like that idea that you mentioned there of the gods being kind of distant, because then you're mixing in some like kind of Dark Sun feelings of some people believe and some people don't. I guess in Dark Sun, no one believes, but there's this distance there where even if you are kind of crying out to the gods, you're not gonna be face to face with them ever.
Like the gods are fickle. They're like mechanically speaking, we can talk about this part in the game. The way you acquire spells is through a reaction roll made to the gods, and this reaction roll could be modified by offering sacrifices to the god, as well as the zodiac sign that the petition to the god is being made on. Because the gods are sort of like it's one of those cultures where it's not like our Judeo-Christian culture where um, God always right, always good, all knowing, all everything. This is a realm where there's different gods over different aspects of life and the material world, and they have their own motives and motivations that are sometimes at odds with each other. Some of these have caused ends of previous suns, so it definitely takes like a different approach, I think.
Hmm.
And it's not so what I mean by distant is just that like the gods just aren't going to come down and physically manifest themselves to the players.
Right.
That's just not going to happen, because I wanted to keep it in the game in this sort of it's historical with the mythological elements kind of tuned up. Like they're
Hmm.
tuned up to a level that wasn't historically actually there. Um, if that makes sense, like the spell casting and stuff like that is a little more like a higher level than what would actually occur in an Aztec society. But it's sort of like if this stuff was real and believable, what would it look like? It was kind of my approach, I guess.
Hmm. So, to address one of the things that you brought up as kind of a staple of everyone's knowledge of Aztec civilization, does sacrifice and like blood sacrifice specifically play a big role in kind of the way that magic is cast, or how is that utilized in the game?
Some spells require blood. So there's like a spell called like bloodletting. Some curses require you to draw the blood of the victim. You need to actually draw their blood to cast a curse on them. Um, and that was just because it was linking back to Aztec and Mayan um, it, belief, where like for instance Mayans, they often believed in bloodletting, that the king, whoever it was, the divine had the divine connection, and it was through the royal line that they could use their own blood for divination. And so, for the Aztecs, blood is powerful. And I do give like that classic. It's not in OD&D, it's not in 0E, but components, because I felt like components add flavor to a spell. So a lot of spells have components like, a shard of obsidian or a piece of jade or bone fragments, like the fragments of a human skull or something like that. And for instance, like a human skull, where are you going to get that? Well, you're probably going to have to take it from someone, if you catch my drift. So, the flavor is there that I tried to put in the magic to make it feel like this fits the setting, and it's still in that Vancian spell slot system. It's just the acquisition of spells, and the spells themselves, as far as their flavor is concerned, are more in an Aztec flavor. But 37 spells, most of those are new. There's probably like a handful of spells that are just reskins of traditional ones that I felt are necessary from original Dungeons and Dragons that needed to be written for an Aztec setting. But most of the spells are brand new. So 37 of them. There's probably like 32 of them that are completely new and original that you haven't seen before. So those should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of an interesting thing that you mentioned there, adding in the concept of spell components, because one of the things that you've kind of been open with, those of us in the Gilded server and on your own show, is your struggle with the system itself and what's going to actually drive this game. And you ultimately settled on Whitebox D&D. So, tell us a little bit about kind of the decision-making process that went into landing on this is going to be a Whitebox compatible game.
There's a couple different reasons. I mean, I tried writing this for BX first, and it didn't really work out very well. I tried writing it for AD&D. That didn't really work very well. And it's not that these are bad games. It's just it didn't, a setting informs rules. And then I started trying to write this in the Whitebox rule set. I was reading the 3 little tan books. I was reading Delving Deeper. I was reading Matt Finch's Whitebox, fantastic medieval adventure game. And it all just started to click, especially as I was starting to write it, because it's a little more gritty. It's a little more sword and sorcery, I guess. And that fits really well with the Aztec setting, I felt like. It's just one of those things. Like I'm a kind of creator where I base a lot of things on feel. I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes like the math for stuff, like I've talked about this with Atomic Punk, like those tables of weapon versus armor, I viewed those as art, almost like trial and error, where I was rolling 2d10 and seeing what felt right. Like obviously I was looking at ratios and probabilities and stuff like that. But another component I feel of that is like, how does it feel at the table? That's really important to me. So when I'm writing mechanics, I'll start it in something, and if it doesn't feel right, I won't force it, because I know that if I start forcing it, it won't work. And sometimes I'll step away from it. If it's not working, I'll be like, okay, maybe it's just that it's me, I'm forcing it and I'm just not in a creative place for it right now. So I'll step away, I'll work on something else, I'll do something else. And if I come back to it and it's still a problem, then I know it's the underlying system that I'm trying to work with or design. And so, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of it's just feeling, and Whitebox 0E just felt right. As I started writing for it, it just clicked, and everything else felt like I was fighting the system as I was writing it. But 0E felt like, as soon as I started writing with that in mind, it just took off. And I guess the final thing I'll say is I feel like the 0E rules need a lot more love. Like, I see Jeff Rowe Johnson in the chat. He's always talking about AD&D, which is a great system, great game. I love it. We got plenty of people, myself included, that talk about BX and make stuff for BX. But Whitebox is one of those like little niche within a niche places that kind of needs a little bit of love too, I felt like. And it will still be compatible with any other version of D&D that is a TSR edition. It won't take too much conversion put hit dice on a D8 instead of a D6, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But it'll be relatively easy. So yeah, I don't know. It just felt right.
Yeah, there really is something to that that sense that the game has to feel right. Um, it's one of the great intangibles of role playing, and one of the reasons why playtesting is
Hmm.
such an important process, because like everything works on paper, as they say. Theoretically, you could run everything through a BX engine, just as long as you swap things around and do this and that. But not every genre, not every type of fantasy or every type of adventure has the same feel to it. And so, using something that's very specifically designed for medieval fantasy in an Aztec fantasy game, there's going to be kind of a disconnect there, and it's a matter of
Hmm.
how little work does it take to bridge that gap.
Hmm.
And you see this with all kinds of things. It's one of the reasons why so many of us have started saying you can't just run everything on a BX engine, because it doesn't work for every type of game. Westerns have a different feel. Superheroes have a different feel. There's all
Hmm.
kinds of different ways that games are supposed to be played based on the genre, based on the type of adventure that you're trying to emulate. Um, so it really is, for a lot of people, a matter of experimentation to find that right system, rather than just saying I'm picking this system and now I'm going to do everything I can, knock down every wall, unscrew every bolt just to try and make everything fit the way that I think it should, rather than
Yeah.
saying I'm going to try and find what fits best here, where I can make the fewest adjustments to actually make this thing work.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to, I think the reason why a lot of people do this is because, and Crafty says it here, yes, OSR is becoming another tag for BX compatible, like 5e compatible. And I think that's what it is. It's sort of become a marketing thing. Like,
Mhm.
and I don't fault people for doing it, go out there and make that money. As a capitalist, 100% support that.
Yeah.
But I guess my drive, my capitalism is tempered by um, that artistry that I have for the stuff that I make, where it has to feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, sure, I could still put it on BX and say it's BX compatible or old school essentials compatible, and make more money that way. Or I could actually make the game play the way I think it should feel and make a little bit less money, but be better in my conscience and better in my feeling of what I made, and actually a little bit more proud of it, even if it's not as successful as it maybe would have been otherwise if I just shoehorned it into the popular system. Um, I'll feel better about it. I'll be able to sleep better at night, and I feel like I'd rather build what I'm building with my name and the stuff that I make off of that than just using it's compatible with this as a marketing thing. But again, if that's what someone else does and they're able to be successful at it, that's cool. Like I tried to make Cowpunchers BX first, and it didn't work.
Mhm.
At least for me, it didn't work. But Miguel and Sylvia over at the Red Room did Wretched Country, which is a little more BX based cowboy game. Granted, they add a little bit more Weird West stuff into it, because everyone loves their Weird West.
Mhm.
Um, so they're able to do something that I felt like I couldn't do. And so sometimes when I say like it didn't feel right, it just didn't feel right to me. It didn't work for me. And so, I can only work with what I have and what I know and what I feel. Someone else might be able to do what I can't, and that's cool. That's what makes the hobby so neat. But for me, I got to be able to, feel proud with what I'm doing at the end of the day.
Mhm. Yeah, and even kind of going back further than where we are now with OSR and 5e compatible, uh, all the way back in the early 2000s, the D20 boom, as people like to talk about, um, all of those games, most of them are awful. Most of them, when you read them, they don't work. They don't work well. But someone slapped the D20 compatible logo. That's why Green Ronin as a company exists right now, is slapping a D20 compatible logo on what IP do you want? We've got superheroes, we've got role playing in a Bible setting, we've got like modern military, all kinds of stuff. There was even a really really bad WWE D20 compatible game in like 2003. It's awful. It's sitting on my shelf somewhere over here. I just have it for the lulz, but it's like people have done that, and they've done that even long before the OSR, long before 5e compatible. It's a lesson that people have struggled to learn in kind of RPG design. And so yeah, maybe it's not as marketable if you don't have the trendy buzzword on it, but I think a lot of people would rather buy something they're unfamiliar with than buying a like bad version of a system that they already have plenty of games for.
Yeah. And I don't want to like be mean to other creators that have made stuff and put their heart and soul into something, but not every game is made equally. I'll admit that my stuff that I make has flaws. Atomic Punk has a lot of flaws in it. It has typos, it has things that are a problem in it. Cowpunchers isn't a perfect game, but people seem to like that stuff because I think what people appreciate with what I do is that I try and take ideas that generally probably shouldn't be too marketable, like in Cowpunchers, straight Western. Who wants to play that? Everyone wants Weird West. We got Savage Worlds, wild Weird West stuff. There's the DCC based one, Weird Frontiers. There's lots of stuff out there, and like Boot Hill and Aces and Eights, there's like the only hard West stuff that we have out there. And so like that's what, and they're both good games, and that's what I would be competing with. But people saw the care, and despite its flaws, that I tried to do something my own, and I think people like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the same with Atomic Punk, when I switched it to 2D10 and really tried to hearken to a lot of different games that I like Classic Traveler and BX and Zero E, and kind of mush it all together into one game. I think people appreciate that too. And then with this, it's like with Macuahuitl, it's like I wasn't sure if people would be interested in playing in a Mesoamerican setting. We're so inundated with Western fantasy and sci-fi and a lot of things like that. And it's like, and this is such an alien culture, an alien thing, that I kind of threw it out there, and I knew some people would be interested, but I didn't know. I thought this Kickstarter, for example, would be a nail biter to the end. I thought I'd still be like, I thought I'd be like 50% funded at this point and biting my nails. Like, am I gonna make it? So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's what people like about what I do. That I like old school games, but I don't adhere so rigidly to like, it must be BX, it must be this, it must be that. I do what I want.
And I'll tell you, the answer to the question, who wants a straight up Western game, is this guy right here. I do own a copy of Cowpuncher sitting behind me over here.
Awesome.
Jeffro, I've not played Boot Hill, but that sounds like a lot of fun, so I should try that out. And Victor Gorchev is here. We have the Dutch invasion. And for anyone wondering in the chat, this is not me trying to insult John. This is a nickname that was given to him by someone we don't talk about on this channel anymore.
Yeah, we don't like him. It's okay. But he made a funny name. He did. He intended it to hurt me, and I think it's hilarious. So
yeah. But yeah, I mean, one other thing I wanted to talk with you about is kind of the art style. We see a lot of black and white art in the OSR. And we also see a lot of black, white, and red just kind of in art in general. However, there's something about this setting where this kind of familiar style really, I think you really kind of bring something out. There's a very historical feel to the black and white imagery, and then the red pops kind of, I think, add some additional color and stuff to the proceedings. It's a really cool art style.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I can't. It is very cliched, and I saw Victor's book. I'll admit, like, I saw Victor do it with Modern Necessities, and I'm like, that looks really good. And I almost didn't do that color scheme with this, but I was like, it fits with the setting. It just fits really well, like blood red and black, like obsidian on a white page. Like, it's very appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went, screw it, I'm gonna do it. And it's not like Vic was the first one to do it either, though. But his book was what made me think about it. Like, that just looks really nice. So at first it was just splashes of red in the text, and then as I was doing the art for it, I was like, I should go back and do some of the art, and like places where there's blood or things like that. Like, I should add red into the art itself, not just the text. And that was when it really, I felt like, started to pop and look a lot more appealing, I guess. And we got the final look that we see now. So
yeah, absolutely. And Jeffro again, the Muppets take Tenochtitlan.
And then they get sacrificed on an altar.
That's fantastic.
I'm imagining Kermit, you got 4 Aztecs, 2 of them pulling his legs, 2 of them pulling his arms, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe Gonzo can be the priest. He's like jabbing a obsidian blade into his chest.
Yep, you have Dr. Teeth and Animal playing the drums.
They're like, Tlaloc is pleased. Does his arms flail?
Sam the Eagle is the god.
Oh yeah, he could be Huitzilopochtli or something,
Yeah,
as well, the god of war.
Yeah. There we go. We accidentally stumbled onto something fun.
Oh, that would never get made.
Yeah. Oh, but that would be funny. That'd be great. So if you don't mind, we have a little bit of the PDF here. If you like, I can go ahead and share this so that people can see some of this. And I want to start on something that's going to end up being a kind of essential tool for anyone who's running this game. And that is the pronunciation guide. And there's a whole history behind why the game is called Macuahuitl that I think a lot of people have heard. Long story short, someone wrote an Aztec fantasy series of novels called Obsidian and Blood, which was your not original, but your kind of preferred name for this game. And so out of respect for them, you went with your original idea, Macuahuitl.
Yeah. I was going by Obsidian and Blood for a while, and then someone on Twitter pointed out to me, is like, "Is this have anything to do with the novels?" And I was like, "Hold up, the novels? What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, this is like a trilogy of books," and they linked to like the Amazon page, and I was like, "Damn, someone already took this name, and Obsidian and Blood is just so good." And I looked it up, and it wasn't trademarked or anything because this was like an indie author, someone like me, and I was like, I'm probably okay to use the name legally, but as a fellow creator, as a fellow indie creator, as a fellow small time person just trying to make it, I was like, that's a real jerk move. I'm not going to do that. So I changed the name back to Macuahuitl because that was what I originally wanted to call it. And some people gave me crap for it. Some people said I should have kept the name. Some people said I should have found some other name in English. But I don't know. I almost feel like the impronounceable nature of the word and having people struggle to say it kind of adds an element of an appealing element to some degree. Like, what is this? There's this weird circular calendar on the cover. I don't know what this word is. Oh, it says Aztecs. on it. I do think there's an element there where I feel confident that obviously the Kickstarter funded, where people are okay with that title, and I'm happy for that. So
yeah, and the other thing that I think is cool about the title, Macuahuitl is a weapon, and there is a proud storied tradition of naming RPGs after weapons.
Yep,
So
that was another part of it too. You got like Warhammer Fantasy, you got all kinds of stuff like that. That are um, named after weapons, and it just seemed appropriate because this is definitely like a very warrior based game. We have your spellcaster class, but this is definitely a game where you're going to be playing a warrior. So,
yeah, and as far as warriors go, I mean, looking at some of our classes here, you have the eagle. You also have the jaguar, which I think this is the Aztec warrior that I'm most familiar with, kind of largely due to Deadliest Warrior. But I think this is the class that I think a lot of people are going to be fighting over.
Maybe once I read the stat block. So if they roll well enough to be an Atomi or a Shorn one, they might want to be those. But we'll see. Shorn ones are essentially like the paladins of the setting. So they were like the elite of the elite, and they eventually get spell casting, as you can see there at level 7. So
yep. And then there's also a merchant class here, which that's kind of an interesting one because a lot of people will look at a game like this and maybe not necessarily think, I want to play the merchant. So talk a little bit about this. I'm not familiar with this role kind of within Aztec society. So what kind of brought about this class? Who is this to kind of your average Aztec?
The Pachteca were merchants. They traveled from, this is where you got goods to go between towns. They wore these silly headband backpacks that, around their head, and they traveled from, city state to city state bringing goods. But they also functioned as spies for their city state. So you're out there, you're getting to the city of maybe a foreign enemy city state. Maybe an Aztec Pachteca is in the Tlaxcala Confederacy, and they're looking at Tlaxcala, and they're spying on the Tlaxcalatecas in order to get information so that when they go back, they made a little bit of dough, they made a little bit of money, but they can tell their rulers like, hey, when I was in the town, I saw that their fortifications were a little sus on this part of the fortress or whatever, So that's kind of the role that they play in the game, and that was something that was often a part of their role within the history of things as well, is spying on the foreign places that they went. Maybe it was even a tribute city that they went to, but if they saw elements of uprising or rebellion within that city state that was paying tribute to Tenochtitlan, maybe they bring that info back so that the army can go there and sort of quell that a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting how often merchants can serve as spies. You get a little bit of that in the aforementioned Dark Sun, but it's one of those kind of interesting aspects of history and fiction where everyone's going to kind of give entree to someone who is trading, but the person who's trading then has the ability to talk to all sides and has access to more privileged information that people don't think to give them. This is kind of really an interesting, almost rogue type character that people will be able to take on.
Yeah, it's like they're like a rogue, but it's more of a social sort of manipulation thing, and not so much like picking locks and stuff's manipulation thing. They get a boon to reaction rolls. They, as you see here, observation and travel. They're less likely to get lost, because they're traveling all the time, so they know the terrain, they know these places, and how to find their way back. So I wanted to make a class that was like all the classes are decent at combat. Obviously, some are better than others, but I wanted to make a class that was that wouldn't step on the toes of a fighter, as far as combat ability, but wasn't going to be weak, but then also offered something to an adventuring party, a group of players that might be very useful. And,
Right.
traveling is in my opinion, is an important part of an RPG. So having those traveling skills and face skills is important.
Yeah. And Immortal Rising comic book is asking about how sacrifices work. We talked about that earlier in the game, or earlier in the night, not the game, rather. But that's kind of part and parcel of spell casting. And here we have, the priest class here to talk a little bit about that. And so, as John was saying kind of earlier in our interview, some spells require a blood sacrifice. Some require components that can only be found from, dead bodies. So that's where, sacrificing comes in to play there.
And also capturing, we can talk about that too, capturing foes. So I modified the rules to be like traditional OD&D. I like the basics of advancement in OD&D of like, it's just 100 XP per hit die. So, 2 hit die creature, 200 XP. And especially with deadly combat, it makes it worth it. And when you're really funneling players into combat like this game does, deadly combat, you should give them a good reward. But if you kill an enemy, a human foe, you're going to get their base status point value. It's instead of XP, it's status points, but it's translatable to be one and the same. If you are able to knock them unconscious and take them prisoner, bind them up and take them back to your city state, you get 5 times. Other warriors, other fighters, other human individuals are the loot themselves. Obviously, that's controversial, but that's what the Aztec warfare was all about. They had whole flower wars for prisoners, where there wasn't for terrain, it wasn't for territory, it was for sacrificial victims and slaves. They had specific warfare for this. So that is also an important part of advancing your character. So getting victims for sacrifice back to your city state is a method of advancing your character's level and gaining status in Aztec society. So it's an important part of that.
Yeah, and if you shied away from that aspect, you'd be kind of doing a disservice to the setting that you've chosen here.
Yeah.
The Aztecs, people focus on kind of the raw deal they got when the Spanish arrived, but the Aztecs were not exactly like the kindest culture.
No, they were highly militarized. There's a reason why in straight up warfare, Cortez should not have won. He should have lost. And he didn't go in militarily at first. It was a series of unfortunate events that led to all-out warfare on Tenochtitlan. But the Aztecs were not liked by a lot of their neighbors. People definitely that were not of the Aztec people, the Mexica people, as they call themselves, those that were ruled by them, that underneath them, they chafed under their rule. They did not like it. It was not a good experience. You had to send to the Triple City Alliance, you had to send slaves, you had to send tribute. You work the field, and a percentage of that, a large percent of that is going to go to your masters in Tenochtitlan and to the emperor. You have to send maybe your son or your daughter a sacrifice to them. You have to, when the army comes through, you have to give them food. You have to give them lodging. You have to give them these things. And you don't have a say in the matter. So that's why when the Spanish arrived, the Tlaxcala Confederacy was like, yeah, after some combat with the Spanish and testing their military ability, they're like, yeah, we'll side with you because we don't like that, the Mexica. We don't like the Aztecs. Like, let's take them out. We agree with you. Let's do it. So, that's why it was the way it was.
Now, Rex Teal has a good question here, and you've alluded to some of this already. He would like to know what sort of adventures or scenarios kind of work best within the setting. You've already kind of mentioned that the Aztecs weren't the kind of people who would be dungeon crawling just because of their views on those sites being, kind of sacred. So, what kind of adventures would people kind of best run in Macuahuitl?
I think that it's going to be a war game to a greater extent. You got to treat it like warfare. So the players are going to be trying to conquer. I give you a timeline of events. So when I play tested this, I started it in the era when there wasn't the Triple City Alliance, and Texcoco was not, and Tlacopan were not part of this Triple City Alliance. It was just Tenochtitlan, and so the players were able to attack places like Texcoco, which would later become allies and part of the Triple City Alliance. So you're going to be waging warfare. You're going to be fighting other city states. You're going to be raiding enemy camps. You're going to be traveling through the wilderness to ambush foes. You're going to be doing all kinds of stuff like that. There's room for maybe finding an Olmec or Toltec ruin and exploring that, of course, finding relics of the ancients and things like that to better establish the right of the emperor to rule over everyone, because again, they were masters of propaganda and wanted to link themselves to the Toltecs and the Olmecs and show their right to rule as a royal bloodline. You could have that kind of stuff, like, oh, there's some ruins here, let's see what's in it. And I've done that in the play test as well. It works just fine. But I wouldn't say there's going to be these long mega dungeon delves into these places. I guess you could try that if you wanted to. The game will work. But and Immortal Rising asks, what about an adventure into Xibalba? Well, that would be the Mayan underworld. Mictlan was the Aztec underworld. Aztec warriors wouldn't want to go there, unfortunately. So it sounds like the Aztecs had this whole underworld society, or underworld mythology, but a warrior wouldn't want to go there. A warrior wants to die on the battlefield. They don't want to go to Mictlan. Mictlan is a terrible place where your body has to go through 9 levels of purification, and they're all terrible before you get to paradise. And this is after you die. You have to walk across hills of glass. You have to survive crossing a river and hope that a dog will help you cross the river. You gotta all this to get to a point where pretty much you become detached from your soul and kind of lose yourself and become one with the cosmos, essentially. Whereas an Aztec warrior, if he died on the battlefield, he'd get to go to Tonatiuh, the sun god. He'd get to be in his retinue and follow the sun along the sky as Tonatiuh, the sun god, would come across the sky. Like, that's what a warrior wanted and earned. So unfortunately, as much as it seems it's set up perfectly for that, lore-wise, mythology-wise, I don't think an Aztec warrior would want to go there.
Mm-hmm. And now Immortal Rising does have another question that I have not actually heard you talk about this. When it comes to research that you did for this project, what were some of the sources that you found most helpful?
In the PDF, I do link to an Appendix B, which lists all of the books that I use. But there was one book called The Handbook to Aztec Life that was really good. There was one on Aztec warriors. I'm forgetting the names and the authors of these. You're bringing it up. Perfect. Yeah, Handbook to Life in the Aztec World by Manuel Aguilar Moreno. Aztec Warrior by John Pohl, PhD. Dr. John Pohl. That was a really good book if you want to know more about warriors. And then the rest are like philosophical or codices type things, like if you want to understand their religious or philosophical aspects. So I list these books here. I think all of these are still in print that you should be able to get your hands on. But these are all books that I referenced and used. And in particular, I would say that Maya to Aztec, Ancient Mesoamerica Revealed by Edwin Barnhart. It's on the Great Courses. It's a really good long multi-part series of lectures. They're each about 30 minutes long, but it's really good, and you'll get a lot of cool little bits of information about the Mayas and the Aztecs in that lecture series. So it's a video lecture series. It's really good. So if you have a Great Courses account, I'd highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm. And Black Lodge Games here in chat asks a question about scenarios in which a warrior would have to go to the underworld before death. And if I'm not mistaken, like that game that they play, the one from Road to El Dorado, the losing team was sacrificed. So if you ended up like being sacrificed to a god, would you end up having to go on a quest kind of through the underworld?
Well, if you lived to old age, going through Mictlan itself was a quest. So there's 9 levels again in Mictlan, and that was just if you lived to old age and died of natural causes. Like you had to jump through these mountains that would just like, they're just these giant mountains, and they'll just smash you if you go through, and then your soul's annihilated. But I guess you could try and set up something like they believed that caves were, again, passageways into the womb of the earth and to Mictlan itself in a lot of respects, because they believed the 13 heavens were all interlinked to each other. So you could as a referee try and craft like there's an ancient relic or an artifact that we need to defeat our enemies, and we need to send warriors into the underworld to retrieve it because it will help us beat our enemies. And I guess there is precedence for it. Like Quetzalcoatl went to the underworld to get the bones of humans to bring them back to the surface and use his own blood to resurrect them to make people of the fifth world our world. That's why he's so revered in their culture, is because he used his own blood to bring them back to life. So you could there's precedence there, but like it's just different like than in a D&D game where you're walking along and you see a cave in a traditional game and you're like, let's go in there, what's in that? Like an Aztec warrior might be like say a prayer to the gods and keep moving. So I guess it's just context and how you handle it.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that like adding rules for playing Olama Litzel would be kind of an interesting addition?
Maybe. I kind of wanted to keep it like, again, very human. I don't know if I'll go that route, but I wanted to keep it kind of human and grounded. Like there's no races in this, right? Like there's no everyone's human. There's no there's nothing like that. So it's kind of like Cowpunchers. Like if someone wants to do that, go ahead and make that happen, but you probably won't get something like that from me, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, even kind of leaving aside the and it would almost be like playing basketball in a D&D game, but it might be an interesting thing to do if someone wanted to try to add Olama Litzel rules to this game. That might be an avenue that someone could explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I would not be mad or anything like that if someone did that, made a custom class or anything, and want to do that. But yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of like Cowpunchers. Like I didn't go Weird West with Cowpunchers. I left that up to like Lord Mateus made a Weird West supplement for that. So it's like cool. If you want to do Weird West Cowpunchers, you can. But that wasn't. It's not my taste. It's not my flavor. Like I'm very stubborn, I guess, in my mindset of like. What I envision it being, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna like shut someone down who wants to do something like that. Go for it,
Right. Now, kind of moving past this, initial campaign that you're working on. I know, with 19 days to go, it's weird to think about kind of moving beyond it. But what are your plans, kind of for Macuahuitl once the the base project is released?
Well, I want to touch on the Spanish. I'll probably do a class supplement for that, and that'll probably be different. I'm trying to. The reason why I didn't add them in this, even as like an appendix thing or something like that, is because they're going to function. They're going to have to function so much differently from the Aztecs, and they were kind of mucking everything up when I was trying to include them. It's partly why I took them out, because I wanted to make sure the Aztecs were right and correct and felt right to me and felt historically accurate. But I do want to include them. So that's definitely something I want to do. I want to maybe do some adventures, some campaigns, some published campaigns would be good. I think a campaign where the Triple City Alliance is around and you're waging war against the Tlaxcala Confederacy or one of the other kingdoms like the Zapotec people would be really cool, or all of it, and maybe classes and essentially codices, kind of like what Castles and Crusades does for other tribes. Like maybe really shine a light on the Tlaxcala Tecas or Zapotec people or something like that, and really shine a light on them and show like this is their culture. Maybe provide some classes from that culture, so that it gives refs and GMs more options. But I don't want to feel like I'm, excluding things that you might need. But because Macuahuitl will be there's plenty enough content in the book itself for you to run a full and complete game. So I'm not like doing like the EA thing where I ship an incomplete game and then hope you get the DLC to complete your game after you spent $60 on it. Like that's not my goal. Just more, it's a supplement that's actually just a supplement to an already complete and finished game. But I want to do stuff like that. Maybe some information on enemies more. So if you want to run a campaign from the perspective of the enemies themselves or have the players fight them, I think that'd be cool.
Gotcha. And I know like people have probably inundated you with this idea over and over again, but when the Spanish established kind of their viceroyalty in what's now Mexico, they had diplomatic relations with the Japanese. So if you wanted to even add like samurai to the game, I guess technically you probably could.
I guess I don't know how historically accurate that would be, but I'd have to do research on that. Because, but again, maybe that it might be something where it's not necessarily historically accurate, but if someone wants to make that, they can. I'll have to look into that. But that would be interesting. I know people love their samurai.
My understanding is that a couple samurai did actually visit the viceroyalty of Spain in Mexico, and so there might have been a little bit of overlap, but it was definitely not like a common thing for just samurai to be running around with the Aztecs and the conquistadors.
I guess there could be an adventure where maybe you play as Spanish or Spanish and Aztec warrior who's allied with the Spanish, and you're hanging out with some of those guys that visited or something, and something happens. But that could be interesting. A little alt history or expansion of those events, because I'm sure those events were boring. I'm sure that the Japanese samurai showed up and it was all nice and cordial, and then they went back home, and nothing of interest really happened beyond, oh cool, samurai came to Mesoamerica. But
there's probably not some kind of scenario where a samurai in full armor like fought 5 jaguar warriors or something like that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But again, if someone else wants to make that, they have a cool idea. But I guess that's another thing too, is like I have to have something like really speak to me to make me want to do it. If I find myself like half-hearted on it, then I'm probably not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. And so for people who have not already backed, the campaign, like I said, has 19 days to go. It is fully funded, and your options here are the one that I went with is the hardcover. You can also do just a PDF. You can do a PDF and a POD soft cover. And I believe those are the options that are available. I think
there's hardcover offset plus print on demand plus PDF. So I gave that tier because I know some people like to have their nice version of the book. So you can give, you can have your nice hardcover in front of you at the table as a GM, and then you can give the print on demand version to your players to abuse and get their Dorito fingers all over, and they don't have to touch your nice version of the book. So, and then you get the PDF too. So, yeah.
And then this has actually been kind of a trend that I've been happy with amongst like friends of mine who've been doing Kickstarters. No stretch goals.
No. People are asking me if I'm going to do any, and I've kind of been thinking about it over the last few days. I don't think I will. I've had someone reach out to me to do a Spanish translation, which I'm very interested in. And if the Kickstarter does really well, I would probably be able to afford a translator, because my Spanish isn't good enough to do this. But this is a guy from Guadalajara who messaged me, and he's like, hey, we're really interested in your game, and if we could get a Spanish translation, it would probably do very well down here. So that's definitely on something I want to do. Whether I can pay for it with this Kickstarter or maybe somewhere down the line make that happen, we'll see. But it's definitely something I'm eyeing, is translating the game into Spanish. I do think that'd be important, and
Yeah.
it's the culture of the Mexican people, and being able to play this in their own native language would be that just seems like a no-brainer to me. But it's just my Spanish is not strong enough, being an American-born Latino Hispanic individual, to where I don't feel comfortable translating it myself. But we'll see. But yeah, no stretch goals. I feel like that's where you get in trouble, and I don't want to jeopardize this by offering something that's going to slow fulfillment down or put me in the hole. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, and that's why it's a trend that I've been happy with recently, is because there have been so many horror stories of people getting wrapped up in stretch goals, now ultimately like taking a bath on their campaign because of it. So I'm glad that people are focusing on just putting out a good product. And as for the Spanish translation aspect, I think that is a very good thought, that if you want to do something like that, you want to make sure that it's the best possible version of that you can release, so that people who would read this game in Spanish are, getting the best version of it. They're not getting something that's kind of wonky and then that turns them off of the game. I think it's good to wait until the resources are there to do it properly.
Yeah, and the way I viewed this Kickstarter, and partly why there's no stretch goals, is because I viewed this as pre-orders. Like, as everyone has seen, the PDF is pretty much done. The book is pretty much done. Anything that I'm adding is just purely like icing on the cake, little edits here and there, trying to catch little typos and problems that I'm finding. But the book is done. It's been play tested all summer. It's done. And I've solo gamed in it too. So I know it works. I know that the game functions. So I just wanted money to fund a nice offset print, because this book is very special to me. And so, yeah, I just viewed this as like, this is just pre-orders, and this is that's why there's no stretch goals, because I don't need to do anything. I don't need to like, oh, give me an extra $5,000 and you'll get you unlock the Eagle Warrior. I'm not gonna. That's lame. I'm not gonna do that to people. My mission's always been like, I want to support myself and my family doing this kind of stuff, and I've enjoyed doing that, but I'm not here to like raid your wallet. I'm always about trying to offer affordable gaming. And I think $32 or $38 for a hardback, and $38 for a hardback and a print on demand plus shipping. Print on demand and is it's a pretty fair price. Like Atomic Punk is $14, for a full 100-something page book. Cowpunchers is a little more expensive because that's on premium paper, but I still try to make it so that it's always cheaper than trying to buy something from Watsy or something like that, or it's at least on par with that. Because I'm not trying to raid your wallet.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to get someone to try your game when the buy-in is a little bit lower, especially when the product that they get is like quality. Because a lot of times the thing that turns people off of new game systems is, I don't want to pay another $50 to $70 for a whole bunch of books and then find out that I don't like this game. So keeping it in that kind of affordable price range, I think, does kind of serve you well.
Yeah, and I think I'm able to do that because it's just me. I have the benefit of doing the writing, the layout, the art, all that stuff on my own. There's no other person on this project other than me, and so I don't have to pay. I'm only paying myself, and I'm not really paying that much. So I'm able to pass those savings on to you, to get into my Billy Mays salesman mode, which I'm terrible at. But you guys get the point.
And not enough cocaine in your system for Billy Mays.
No, there's that Gygax Billy Mays connection there.
The secret ingredient is cocaine.
That's the secret to success. Dang.
Well, We are kind of running out of time here.
Mhm.
So this has been a great conversation. I'm glad that we were able to do this. For those of you who are not currently backers, if you are watching after the fact, you'll be able to find the link to Kickstarter pinned in the comments. For those of you who are watching right now who are not backers, you can back it right now using that link that I just dropped in chat. Any final thoughts or anything you want to leave people with as we're closing out the episode tonight?
Yeah, the hardback is going to be very limited run. So it's going to be hardcover, red foiling on it, Smithsonian book with a ribbon. Because I want to give you a nice quality book, and that's what you're getting at the $32 tier plus shipping. I think shipping's $6 US, so you're getting it for $38 total. And there's probably going to be only a limited number of those, and once I sell out of those, because there'll probably be some left. Once I sell out of those, I don't know if it'd probably be a long time before I ever would consider doing maybe another crowdfunding campaign to print more, like a second printing of that hardcover. Print on demand will be available if you want that, but hardcover will be very limited. So, I want to offer something nice, but there's not going to be a lot of it. I'll just say that.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Well, that is going to do it for Rollin Bones this evening. Next week, we'll be back here at the same time. Not sure who we're going to be talking to or what we'll be talking about, but you can stay tuned to see all of that. Remember to go check out this Kickstarter, and also remember the Basic Expert has a YouTube channel as well. So definitely watch his content. He's live every Monday night with the Netherlands' #1 sex symbol, Viktor Gorchev. And they do natural ones. He's got videos that he puts up. You've really been putting some like cool production into your videos recently too. So
yeah, I've kind of neglected my channel a bit aside from the streaming, because this Kickstarter is just eating up my life.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna get back to it. I have some ideas for videos, and I'm trying to, with everything I do, I'm always trying to do better than I did before. So yeah, I'm trying to make my videos a lot more enjoyable to watch, less rambly and more produced, I guess, but higher quality still. Not cringy either. I hope they're not cringy.
They haven't been. I'll put that out there. I think
Cool.
they've been very good. So all right. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching this evening. And remember, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you all next time.
See ya.